just before I jump into the death circle here, it's kind of stressful being the last person. Can I get a big hello? Thank you. So, just to begin, I'd like to pay tribute to my grandfather. And my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and he was 89 years old, and he was quite a character. And you know what grandfathers are like. Grandfathers always try to impart a little bit of wisdom to you, especially grandkids. And often they use little sayings. And I remember my grandfather always used to say to me, he would say, Ayden, there's only one way to get along with people, and that's keep away from them. But there's another thing that my grandfather used to say to me that I laughed at, and it's quite fitting for today. My grandfather would always say to me, he would say, Ayden, if you ever have to make a speech or a presentation of any kind, just remember one thing. It should be just like a woman's skirt. It should be long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to make it interesting. But all joking aside, I'm super excited to be here. We've heard some tremendous speakers, and I've always been a huge fan of TED Talks and what TED Talks stands for. And it's kind of cool to be back at York again because I haven't been back here for 18 years since I graduated in 1996. And as you can imagine, I don't remember that much about it. I mean, I do remember the $40,000 student loan I had. And when I was here at York, my mother actually had a bumper sticker on her car, and it said, "My kid and my money go to York University." But let's turn our attention to the topic at hand, combustion. So as a philosopher, I've always felt that there's certain things in the physical sciences or the physical world that can shed light on the social, and vice versa. So without boring you too much, I just wanted to start with the definition of combustion in a physical sense. So combustion, you need a process of oxidation, so you need air, you need fuel, and you need a spark. And we can learn a lot by this definition. I know I learned a lot growing up, and pardon my language, but when I was growing up, I was always driving a shitbox. And these cars would always break down on me. And I'm not that mechanical, so I'd call my dad up, and my dad's brilliant, and he's very mechanical, and he would always tell me to think in terms of these three elements. So he would say to me, son, if your car is not working, and listen closely, especially the ladies, So he would always say to me, he would say either there's an air intake problem or there's a fuel problem, so there could be a clog in the fuel line or the fuel pump, or a spark or an ignition problem, meaning that the starter won't work or the spark plugs aren't working. So I would like to suggest three things today. First of all, we're all spark plugs. Every human being has the spark of creativity and the spark of ingenuity within us. Now, having said that, not every idea, not every spark, not every match that we light is going to create fire. And all the great entrepreneurs will tell you this, even the ones that went on to create Apple and Facebook and Google. They'll all tell you that they threw all kinds of ideas out at the world, and it wasn't until their 10th or maybe 20th idea that something caught on or caught fire. And if you're anything like me, you've often turned the television on, and you've seen these massive combustible events down in California, these wildfires. And back in 2011, there was a huge fire called the Wallow Fire, and it burned 500,000 acres of land. And it's puzzling to me because the investigators said it was all started by one match, one single, solitary, careless match. And it's puzzling to me because last night, it took me a whole box of matches just to get my propane barbecue lit on my back deck just to fry up a steak. But if there's one idea or thought that I'd like to leave you with, it's this, and that is that what makes combustion in a physical and a social sense, what makes it so exhilarating and often sometimes terrifying is its unpredictability. And what I would like to suggest today is that that's what makes life worth living, and that's what makes life so magical. And you see, I don't think any of us really embrace the unpredictability or the possibilities in our life as much as we could, including myself. Because if we did, we'd have more fun, and we'd be more passionate, and we'd enrich the lives of people around us. Because you don't know how things are going to play out. You don't know what's going to happen. You could win the lottery, sir, today. You could meet your future husband. You could meet your future wife. You could meet somebody in a coffee shop 10 minutes after my talk, and that person could become your business partner to go on to create the greatest company in the world, even better and bigger than Facebook and Google. I think you get the idea. But rather than be so conceptual, I'd rather be a little bit more illustrative. And I'd like to share with you my story and a recent project that I've been involved with that happened very spontaneously but had a huge impact. And it's kind of funny because when I look back throughout my life, I turned 40 this year, and I'll be honest with you, I've been an ambitious person. After graduating from York University, I had the opportunity to work and live and travel in places like Africa and Asia and Europe. I had the opportunity and the blessing to start a couple of companies and start a couple of charities. And actually, my boss, my present boss now, calls me Forrest Gump. Because in 1998, I ran, in the tradition of Terry Fox, I ran across Canada, coast to coast. And I did that as a type 1 diabetic, trying to raise money and awareness in the diabetic community. And you can imagine the amount of mental and physical energy that that took. And yet, my latest project happened a lot more spontaneously, and I'd like to start at the beginning. So March of last year was a big month for me because I finally bought my first house, fully detached house in Toronto. And the story starts kind of a couple of weeks before. So I was with my friend Mike, and Mike's also my real estate agent, and Mike and I were at the house a couple of weeks before I bought it. And we were standing in the front yard, and we were looking up at the house, and we were deciding whether I should place an offer on the house. And we were chuckling to each other because everybody that goes by my house peers in those big, beautiful windows. So a couple weeks later, after I bought the house, I was at a furniture shop. And I found this sign, and I love this sign. If you're waiting for a sign, this is it. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny to stick that right in my window and kind of mess with the neighbors' heads? So I did. And the response was unbelievable. I had all kinds of neighbors come to my house and knock on my door, and they said, "We love your house, we love your sign." We were often wondering who was going to eventually buy this house and move in. So I'm an entrepreneur, and I work from home, and I have glass boards and whiteboards and chalkboards all over my house for strategy reasons. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny to write in a chalkboard every single night something thought-provoking or something inspiring every day? Of course, my neighbors think I'm nuts, which is kind of true. So this was one of my very first signs. You can read the news or you can make the news. And you see, true to form, the news media started showing up at my house, and the Toronto Star did an article on my chalkboard, and CTV National News and Huffington Post, and on, and more people started knocking at my door and leaving me gifts and chalk and flowers. And by the time the summer rolled around, you know, my house was like Anne of Green Gables. And I thought to myself, forget about writing in my front window, I just want to close the drapes. But I kept writing, and this story is a very good illustration of some of the points that I'm trying to make. For example, over the last year, I've been at home in my PJs working, writing nonsensical things in my window, and now I'm here addressing you fine people. And you can imagine I had a lot of fun with my board, and I usually try to write something thought-provoking or inspiring, but you see, the ones that get all the attention on the board are the humorous ones. So I'm going to share 3 of them with you because I only have a couple minutes left. But here's one: need more chalk and wife soon. And you can imagine I got a lot of attention from this sign, and it got me a girlfriend, and she's here somewhere. I can't see because the lights are really bright, but hello, baby. And it was unbelievable, this sign, because I had 18 boxes of chalk dropped off at my house. And I had love notes, and there was one email in particular I remember. So an elderly gentleman wrote me an email, and he actually sent me pictures of his daughter. And he sent me his daughter's whole profile, her whole biography, and she was quite an accomplished young lady. But the subject line of the email pretty much said it all. So I opened the email, and it reads, "Hello, future son-in-law." And this next board, it really doesn't seem probably to you as that funny. The intent of the law is more important than the law, but there's a story behind it. So a couple of weeks ago, I was pulling onto my street, a couple doors down from my house, and I slightly rolled through the stop sign. So there was a police officer there, and of course she pulled me over, and I tried to be charming, and I said to her, I said, look it, it's broad daylight. I can see about 200 yards in all directions. I live right there. I'm very cognizant of the kids in my neighborhood. Can you cut me a little break? And she said no. So when I got home, I wrote that on my board. The intent of the law is more important than the law. And I hope that police officer drove by the next day, and I hope she had a chuckle. I'm not sure. So the last board I'm going to share with you is this one. And my girlfriend and I, we always chuckle about this one because typically my girlfriend comes to me on a Thursday or Friday and she always says to me, what are we going to do this weekend? And my common response is, what are we not going to do? So just in closing, I want to read, because I have about a minute left here, I want to read you 3 handwritten notes that were dropped off at my house. And I got about 800 emails one day just from the Toronto Star article, and I was quite overwhelmed. But these 3 notes are kind of a really good illustration of the spontaneity and the magic of this project and how one small creative spark, how that affected my neighborhood and how it impacted people around the world, because I got emails from around the world, and also how this project impacted me deeply. And that's the cool thing about combustion. When you start a campfire, it gives you warmth in return. So I come out of my house one morning, and there's a box of chalk there, and there's a Post-it note on it. And it says, sorry, the kids were against giving you the wife. Got you chalk instead. And this next one touches my heart because at the end of the day, I know why I write on my board. And I write on my board to make people stop and think. Particularly young kids, and there's a lot of young kids in my neighborhood. And I'd like to have kids soon too, and I don't know where Shania is, but so I got a Christmas note from a local school teacher, and she said, Dear Chalkman, thank you so much for your messages. My class and I write them on our chalkboard almost every morning and talk about their meaning. Thank you so much, Mrs. David and her class. And I kind of saved the best one for last, and, well, let me just read it. Dear homeowner, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to write the daily messages in your window. I came to this neighborhood a year ago under very difficult circumstances, and reading your messages every day gave me a lift, a laugh, or something to think about. They became part of my daily routine that I look forward to as I walk my dog to the park. I'm moving next week, but I just wanted to acknowledge your efforts and say thank you for taking the time. I am happier, stronger, and 100 times better off than I was this time last year. And I believe your words of encouragement played a role in that. So thank you again for touching my life. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Thank you.